We are back after a week hiatus to talk some Florida football and some other things as well. The Gators, after a bye week, get back in the win column. They have a winning record. They are 3-2. They beat the UCF Knights 24 to 13 at home Saturday. And we have thoughts. So Topher, just over to you. General thoughts on the win.
Yeah, overall, one of Florida's better performances uh, in the Billy Napier era. Certainly that first half, through that first half, it kind of felt like the best game since like South Carolina 2 years ago. Very complete performance. Defense looked good. Offense moved the ball extremely efficiently. Second half kind of sputtered. Offense just, if you get behind the chains with this offense, you can kind of just lose that rhythm and things don't work anymore. Defense was still fine. Honestly, I do think a lot of that is UCF kind of pooped its pants. Uh, they were really, really bad in
They're
a
not
way that
good.
I didn't expect UCF to be this year. But I mean, if you're Florida, very happy. A lot of good things, um, repeatable things. Whether it's repeatable against teams like Tennessee and Ole Miss, I don't know about that, but certainly a very good win. And it's nice not to be the worst P5 team in the state of Florida.
It's very nice. It's very nice. And even if they had lost, I think it's hard for them to be worse than FSU right now. So they've at least got that going for them. Yeah, no, it was a good win. Like you said, it's hard for me to really get too excited for this team. Like I feel like this podcast has just been a lot of pessimism and doom and gloom about the Gators, and this game was kind of like a chance to be optimistic. And even then, I'm still a little like I don't mean to come in here and burst everyone's bubbles and say like that was more smoke and mirrors, but UCF is very bad. Like they're not a good football team. And it's glad that you handled business. Like, obviously, you know, I'm not going to be upset about a win. Uh, but maybe you would have liked to see a little bit more, especially in the second half. But, they kind of stalled, and that was fine. I mean, 24-13, still a solid win. You only hold them to one touchdown. And it was late in the fourth quarter where it's like, it doesn't. This is not going to change the result unless you completely just disintegrate in the last 5 minutes of the game, which they didn't do. Um, and I think, sort of the biggest thing that stood out to me, or sort of my main takeaways, uh, are the offensive line still not very good, and they still did the rotation thing. And Topher, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, so I'll let you talk about it. Uh, the defense looked much better, but again, kind of to that point of it's hard for me to feel confident. Is it Florida improving vastly? You get the bye week to rejuice, or is it UCF's O line being that bad? Because it's like if it were like Tyreek Sapp and like players who like are every down starters making plays, which they did. Like Jason Marshall was good again, and Bryce Thornton, who I think will play more, was really solid. He had a great pass breakup in the end zone on one play. But when it's like every player that we've complained about and who we, sorry, no disrespect to your character, but just to your football ability, we don't think are very good. Like George Gums gets a sack, Jack Pyburn makes a huge breakup, like blows up a play. Uh, RJ Moten had a safety blitz, or I guess he's listed as a linebacker now, so I don't know if that was just a linebacker blitz or safety. Uh, but when it's like every player who we don't think should start is like making impact plays, is like it's like, okay, are you actually improved? Are you better? Like, are you getting better as the season goes on, or is UCF just so bad that like Florida's second string players are out here making big time plays? And so that's kind of the thing where it's like, obviously, I do want to talk about this game some more, but I do want to kind of get into a preview for Tennessee because that is obviously going to be the real litmus test for was this winning against UCF a smoke and mirrors, or is this team actually improving? Are they going to make it a game against Tennessee and handle business against teams they should handle business against, like Kentucky in 2 weeks? Um, and real quick note before I throw it back to you, it is very funny that Florida has now beaten Gus Malzahn twice, both by the same score of 24 to 13. So we have that. So Topher, I want to start with the defense just because they did have maybe their best game besides Sanford, obviously, but Sanford is Sanford. So I'll let you talk about them.
Yeah, so I think to your point, there are promising signs and also signs that might just be noise. Um, I think the big things for me are there are certain players that are solidifying in my mind as build around type of guys. Caleb Banks is the best defensive lineman on this team. He's been really good the whole season, really. Once again, really good against UCF. On the D line, Cam Jackson finally got more playing time and was really good. He looked a lot like he did last year. He's had a really slow start to the year, both not playing and not playing well when he does. Um, he was really good. So if those guys play this way, that's a real tangible building block. I liked some of the things on the back end. I think Bryce Thornton is a guy that needs to be written in pen at safety. A lot of big plays, both in the run game, pass game. He looked a lot more comfortable and a lot more competent than some of the other guys we've seen throughout there. Obviously, Jason Marshall's still great. Linebackers still pretty good, although there were some shaky plays. I think the things that worry me are we're still seeing the same problems. It's just UCF was bad at exploiting them. Like I just for reference, I just literally just rewatched the defense cut up courtesy of LibGator. Uh, every single time UCF ran GT counter, it hit for at least 6 yards. Every
It's not
time.
what you want. Not what you
That's
want.
the exact same run play that has killed Florida for like 5 straight years. And UCF just didn't run it that frequently, but every time they ran it, it's a five hit every time. They struggled with other counter looks as well. The only time they beat counter was because KJ Jefferson is hilariously slow. Like that was the only time they got a good defensive stop on a counter play. Um, Still bad eye discipline with some Jets. There was a big hit to RJ Harvey in a pass play. It was the exact same play that UCF ran last week against Colorado that hit for a 75-yard touchdown, and they still got fooled by it. And that is just bad awareness, bad coaching, something bad, all bad. Can't let that happen. Same exact play they ran last week. You got fooled in the exact same way Colorado just got fooled. That's just not good enough. And that's the kind of stuff that is a constant through line of this defense. But I think the good players are quite good. And I think overall I like the energy. I think the energy was a lot better. I think they played fast. They played aggressive. We will continue to clown on Jack Pyburn a little bit because he's kind of
Yes.
a meme, but he does play with a lot of energy, admittedly. And I appreciate seeing guys like that do play hard. I think it rubs off on everyone else and they play hard. Um, like Jordan Castell tackled a lot more aggressively, was a lot more in the box than he was earlier in the season. And things like that are good, but still some glaring holes. And when you play teams that are a lot better than UCF, it'll be an issue.
Yeah, I think sort of to your energy point, I think that's pretty going to be a pretty important factor to build on because, going forward, I don't think that was the game where it's like, oh, all of a sudden these guys are now fully reaching their potential of like their recruiting rating. You know, a lot of these guys where it's like Sap and Pipe, I don't know about Pyburn, but but a lot of these guys like Banks, for example, and especially in the secondary too, where it's like they had high recruiting ratings coming out the gates. Like it's not like Florida had a bunch of 2 and 3 stars and we're like, oh, we can only ask for so much. Like maybe you can say that was a misevaluation by the recruiting sites, but they were high recruiting like blue chip recruits. And so if they can sort of build on this momentum where it's like, and this is not me, this next point I'm about to say is not me saying they're going to have a chance to necessarily beat these teams. Well, for one of them I am. But for Georgia and Ole Miss, these are two schools in particular where, we saw they were a little shaky on the O line. And again, this is not me saying they're going to beat Georgia or maybe even keep it close. I don't know how close they'll keep it with Georgia, but like there are opportunities to expose weaknesses on their O-line and more so with Ole Miss. I know with Georgia that was against Georgia or against Alabama, and I know uh what we just saw against Alabama and Vanderbilt, but there's chances if you play disciplined, if you don't make the same silly mistakes, there is a chance that you at least make some plays. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to even keep it close. I'm just saying there are chances to cause disruption. Um, and like you said, there's these players that we're seeing now where it's like, okay, they clearly need more playing time. Like Bryce Thornton was the guy where it's just like, I'm sure he has played a decent bit, but it's like, where has he been like all season in terms of just making these plays? I'd like to see more of that. Um, and kind of now going against my own point where it's like they did look good, and I saw somebody post a clip of KJ versus them last year with he was with Arkansas and now with them UCF. And I think he's definitely worse than this year. There's no doubt that he is worse this season than he was last season. But I think a big part of that is the fact that even though Arkansas's line isn't very good, it's still an SEC offensive line. And I know UCF is in the Big 12 now, but that doesn't automatically mean they just have a Big 12 offensive line. They are still very much in this transition phase of we have to beef up, we have to get bigger, we have to get stronger to play in a power conference. And I think that game was a big shout. And even last week too. I mean, 48 points given up to Colorado, and you only scored 21. And I know Colorado's improving a lot too, but I still don't think Colorado's that good. And I kind of wanted to lead with this, and it slipped my mind, and it's just coming back to me. But it is funny where Saturday was probably the most chaotic Saturday we'll get this season. I mean, you have Alabama, number one, lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, that only happens in video games, man. Like that only happens in Dynasty rebuilds. They brought the goalpost all the way to the river to Broadway, an hour-long walk. And then going past that, you have Missouri getting dog walked by Texas A&M. You have uh I'm trying to think of the other Tennessee, number four, losing to Arkansas. Um, so many upsets. What was it? Like almost half of the top 11 lose, and then even going past like Michigan lost too, and so many top 25 upsets. So in the most chaotic day, Florida plays its most functional game of the season. And that in and of itself is chaotic, which I think lends itself to how crazy that weekend was. Topher, do you have any more thoughts on the defense before we shift over to the offense?
Not really. I still think there's just too many foundational issues. I think with better coaching, both schematically and teaching, there are enough good players to be a good defense, but until things change higher up in an off season, there's only so much they can do.
Yeah. So shifting over to the offense, I kind of want to lead off with this here and maybe get your thoughts. And my main takeaway is that the offense did look good. The running game is still good. The offensive line is still something. Uh, but my main takeaway is that we've moved past the need for Graham Mertz. I Actually, no, that's wrong. This is my main takeaway. The wide receivers are incredible. Their wide receiver room is so good. You don't have Trey Wilson. He warms up, he's suited up, but he's a scratch, like late game, or I guess an hour before the game. You have Aiden Mizell's out. So it's two of their top guys, like two of their fastest receivers are out of the game, and Badger and DK look incredible. Even Tank Hawkins, who's a freshman, he looked really good in spots. Um, and the fact that they are so good makes up for the fact that the play calling, like I don't even know if this is necessarily, I mean, I feel like this is just because or due to a product of Graham Mertz, that the play calling is so one-dimensional and so conservative. I rewatched the Florida game. I use Planet Gator. Shout out Planet Gator. So we'll shout out Live Gator and Planet Gator, the two goats, to chart every Graham Mertz pass. And this is like I know I probably should have done it from how far he dropped back, but I simply did it from the line of scrimmage. So using the line of scrimmage as the marker, how many yards past that or how many yards behind that? And this is every single Graham Mertz pass. And this is completions. 3 air yards, -4, 6, -2, -5, 1. He had a 13-yard touchdown pass to Badger, who was wide open. He's all alone in the end zone. -3, 14, 0, -6, 13, jet sweep, 11, 7-yard touchdown pass, 1, 24, 4, 0, 1. He had an average A dot of 4.1 yards. That is I mean, first off, it's boring. Don't get me wrong. Like, you can play boring football and win. Like, clearly, if that works for you, it works for you. Like, if you're gonna go 12-0 and you're gonna play that style of football, I'm not gonna complain. The issue is that they can't go 12-0 doing that because they don't have the O line and they don't have the defense. And so the dink and dunk, it works because their receivers are so good. But I'd like to see the receivers be able to do more than just take a wide receiver screen or take a check down and then work for 10 or 15 yards. Because so many of those passes I read off to you resulted in first downs, resulted in 10 plus yard gains, resulted in a 15-yard pass turning into a 30-yard pass because the receivers are so good. But it's just because it's a check down in space or a wide receiver screen. And I mean, we've seen this now for almost 20 games. And the record is what it is. And so, Topher, I'll throw it to you just to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think just to the point about the receivers, I think it's a very explosive group that goes like 5, 6 deep with genuine difference makers. And a lot of them do slightly different things, but there is like a real speed and explosion to this unit, which they haven't had since, I don't know, 2019. Uh, like they've had some good receivers since, but like as a unit to have this many explosive, fast, dynamic guys, it's a real weapon, and I think it works. I mean, they're able to be more dynamic in the screen game and the underneath game because of it. And I think a lot of these guys, that is where they're best right now. I think Hawkins and Mizell right now are best served kind of in that underneath world, just because they're kind of limited on what kind of deep stuff you can do. Um, but to your other point, I think it's hard to do that for a whole drive. You know what I mean? Consistently. And we saw that in this game where when things are working and everything's on schedule in the first half, you can go on 10 play, 12 play, whatever, these long touchdown drives. But it's really, really hard to sustain that for 4 quarters, even if you're a great team. And Florida's not a great team. And when you don't have any kind of manufactured explosives in your offensive repertoire, it's just so hard to consistently move the ball down the field. Um, and as efficient as Graham Mertz is, and he's very efficient, he doesn't make mistakes, he runs the offense well. It's just so hard to see the lack of explosiveness in the vertical passing game when he's on the field compared to what DJ can do. You
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
we saw it where it's like, okay, he's 8 of 9 to on the scripted opening drive, Graham Mertz. And like I just read to you, 3 yards, -4, -2, -5. And that's not being like negative sounds bad, but it's just because it was a wide receiver screen. And the player worked up the field. Like he had 55 passing yards on the first drive, only 23 air yards. So that shows you what the receivers are doing after the fact. And then DJ Lagway immediately comes in the game and he drops his dime to Chimere DK. And it's like maybe I'm wrong. And like we haven't really seen it, but it's like if you want to do that, like can DJ really not run 10 straight screen passes? Like obviously, I've never been a quarterback at any level, so far be it from me to assume what quarterbacks can and can't do. But like when DJ makes these throws down the field that are so incredible to watch, it's like, can he also not do the simple check down or screen game that Graham can? And I also think it's so interesting that like when DJ is in the game, the play calling is clearly different. Like they push the ball a meet on the very first play that DJ comes in the game. And with Graham, it's five checkdowns or not, it's five wide receiver screens in a row. And like again, against UCF, it works because they're frankly not a very good defense. And the wide receivers are very explosive. And especially for guys like Tank Hawkins, which are just all speed, all explosiveness, like get him in open space he's gonna break it off for 10, 15 yards. Um, but it's just like, I hate to keep harping on this fact. And, we have seen DJ now against, SEC competition, and he's looked a little shaky at times. And the team is now in a spot 3-2 where it's like you still can go 6-6, 7-5, make a bowl game. and maybe you lose that with DJ. But I A find that hard to believe, and B, like I don't know, like I'd like to see building for the future, similar to defense, where it's like I don't know, the defense kind of feels like it is what it is at this point. They might show flashes, they might still just give up a lot of big plays, but we have promising players there who can be something in the future to build towards a defense that is actually good going forward. And it feels like the same thing on the offense, where it's like, okay, you get DJ to build real chemistry with these freshmen and sophomores like Mizell and Wilson when they're back and Tank Hawkins, but we just don't see that. So I don't know. Do you want to talk about the offensive line or do you want to keep talking about that? Or
Yeah,
any more thoughts on
I'll get
that?
to the offensive line, but I still have a final Mertz point is that he's not doing anything badly, right?
Yeah.
He's a good player, but it's just there's only so much he can do. And it's at a point now where we've seen enough of him to know he just can't push the ball down the field. I know it's hard to make judgments in each individual game without like all 22 to gauge what options he has down the field, but we've seen Graham Mertz play football. Like the Miami game, for example, he had like 4 or 5, something like that, shots down the field in single coverage where Badger or DK like had a shot down the field and the ball's just not competitive enough.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
DJ's better at pushing the ball down the field, and when you can do that, it just makes the offense able to be more explosive.
and to your point, real quick before I'll let you talk about the line is like he had two downfield passes. One was a pass like 20 yards down the field, and it was just a wide receiver wide open, no one around him in the middle of the field, and he just caught it sitting in zone coverage. The second one, which is the one I texted you this morning, where where the corner is about to blitz. Graham Mertz points him out, tells somebody to pick him up, and then they hike the ball. Nobody picks him up, and he just has a free shot at the quarterback, but Graham rolls out. He throws that ball, completes the pass. It's a good play, but I'm like 90% sure that was not the receiver he was throwing to, and someone just went out and grabbed the ball for him and took it upfield for like 30 yards. And that's kind of my last point. Like you said, he's not been bad, but it's just like we know what he is. And
Yeah.
so, Topher, I will let you talk about the offensive line.
Yeah, all right. We got to get to the offensive line because it's just still weird. It's still weird. For a while, it looked like it was going to be fine again. I saw reports. Nick Delatorre said something this week about Florida was a little more committed. They know the guys they want to play on the front five, and they're going to stick to them. And then, for whatever reason, on the DJ Lagway possessions, they're also rotating both offensive guards. And like, what are we? What? Why? Why are we doing this? Why are we still doing this? Is there
It
another team in the country that does this well ever? Am I crazy? Is this a thing?
it doesn't make sense. Like I can I will, play devil's advocate here, but I will then respond to my own point with a criticism. So to try and get in Billy's brain and defend him, maybe you put in the two guards because okay, they're worse, but you want to get them experience in case they have to play. And you with DJ's legs, it alleviates some of the issues on the line. But then to respond to my that own point is like, don't you want DJ to develop as a pocket passer? Like he is fast, but he's not like Jalen Milrow speed, Shador Sanders, Jaden Daniels. Like he can scramble if he needs to, but that's not his game. He's got an insane arm. He can light it up down the field. Wouldn't you want him to develop that, especially as a freshman? And if you have worse offensive linemen, A, that's just like a detriment to his safety because you don't want him taking sacks. And B, if the line is worse and you're forcing him to scramble more, like, isn't that also a detriment to his development? Like, if you have the best five in, theoretically, that gives him more time to throw. But I don't know. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, like on just on like a fundamental level of like offensive line development, I just don't understand it. And again, like you're saying, I'm willing to be explained why this is a thing. I just don't see because this just isn't how good football teams operate. It's just so hard to. I feel like it's so hard to build chemistry if you're chopping and changing the guards all the time. But it's at least they're only changing the guards now. They're not also changing both
That's
tackles all
true.
the time. So baby steps, you know.
It's just like it really because like I mean, for all intents and purposes, Graham Mertz is the quarter is QB1. Like they rotate, they do a two QB thing, but Graham Mertz is playing like 70-80% of the drives. Like he's the guy. So you have a certain vibe out there that you would then assume is like, okay, well, if this is the QB1 and this is the five out there for him, that's the starting five offensive lineman. So that's your best five. So why are we putting in the worst lineman for the other quarterback who's, quote unquote worse? I don't I don't get it. Like it doesn't like obviously they're not giving up on that drive, but like it's not it doesn't click. It doesn't compute. I don't understand it. So, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And I think to the point of like who is the better offensive line, something funny I'm kind of noticing is that the left guards are both pretty good, and there happen to be the young guys. So it's Najee Harris, who's the, I guess, starter, you'd say, because he plays most of the drives. And then Bryce Lovett will come in and play some spots at left guard. He's another redshirt freshman. I think they're both redshirt freshmen. Harris might be a sophomore. I don't know. But on the right side, it's Damian George and Cam Waits, who are both pretty bad.
Not
So,
great.
and I'm not saying that particular is anything was his fault. Like maybe Lovett can't play right guard, maybe whatever. I don't know. Offensive line is a very nuanced position. I respect that. But it's like it's really funny if you're chopping and changing to get guys experience. It's just like I don't know, man. Like, does Cam Waits need more experience?
It's yeah. I think the funniest play, or I mean, I already told you what I thought the second funniest play of that game was Florida had it in their own like 15 or something, and they think that a UCF lineman jumped off sides. So Graham Mertz literally like jumps up and points like he's celebrating, like they're gonna get 5 yards on an offside, and then they call a false start on Damian George. That was like probably the most over like best picture of Florida of just that of just Damian George causing an offside or a false start penalty when everybody thinks it's an offside. And I was just like, oh, sick, awesome. And then the drive I think was like three and out or something. And they punted, but it's puzzling to me. So, I mean, do you have anything else you want to say about the UCF game?
Um, I think overall it was fun to watch as a fan of the Florida Gators because they were pretty good and they won against the team I wanted to see them win against. But this does not change any prognostications about the future of the program. I still think, as much as I do really like Billy Napier as a dude, change has to happen eventually. But there is enough promising signs that I'm willing to listen if things continue on this trend and they beat Tennessee, go beat Ole Miss. Like there's enough there that I could see development happening. I just would not expect it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a take here, and I gotta pull it up real quick. So I guess we'll I'm gonna while I pull this up, I'm gonna pose a question to you because I kind of want to start previewing Tennessee just a little bit. I know we don't really preview games a lot here, but they go to Tennessee next week. Tennessee just had a massive upset loss against Arkansas on the road. They return home. They're probably going to be a little upset, probably play with a little more fire, especially now that it's a rivalry game against Florida. Uh, what do you think's going to happen? I mean, Tennessee has shown that maybe their offense is not as just add quarterback, add water, score 50 points as we thought. I still think they're good. Um, but sort of what do you think? How do you think the Gators are going to fare next week? While I
Yeah,
pull up
so
this thing.
I think your point about the Tennessee offense is fair. I think we're seeing the limitations of the Mickey Mouse Baylor offense. Um, I hate it. I said this when we were talking about Alex Golish coming to Florida, is that I hate the Baylor offense. I used to be into it as I've evolved as a football watcher. I'm so sick of this nonsense. And when you don't have dudes at wide receiver, it's really, really hard. And you can see the fall off for Tennessee when they don't have guys like Jalen Hyatt consistently. Like their perimeter is pretty weak right now. Nico's a freshman. It is what it is. But at the same time, I still expect them to absolutely torch Florida because they're big in the front five. They have good running backs. And I expect Josh Heupel is just going to run like GT counter and tight end insert and, RPO hitches like 60 times and run the ball for 350 yards.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a massive win for Billy. I mean, Clark Lee beat Bama, and now he has more ranked wins than Billy Napier.
Jesus Christ.
Um, and now that I've pulled up my thing I want to talk about is unless they can just string off a bunch of wins, beat a Tennessee, find a way, uh, even if they get back to 6-6, 7-5, and I've seen some fans be like, particularly one set of people say that Billy Napier might be fine. And here's my biggest issue with him now that they look somewhat functional. Does he know he's fired? Because why has he given up on the recruiting trail? Like Florida, this is not national. This is just the SEC. Florida ranks 15th. The only team they're ahead of in the SEC is Vanderbilt. They have one five-star commit. This is 247 Sports, by the way. And I don't know if this is composite or just 247. Still not great. I'm sure the rankings don't change that much if it is the composite or if you go on like on three or something. We have one five-star, six four-stars, and six three-stars. So they only have 13 commits so far. If you go 1 through 7 or even we'll go 1 through 8, so the top half of the SEC, all of them have 21 commits. The worst, Oklahoma, who's eighth, has 14 four-stars. If you look at the schools that Florida is trying to directly compete with, Georgia has three five-stars, 16 four-stars. LSU has three five-stars, 17 four-stars. Even Auburn, who's a complete dumpster fire right now with Hugh Freeze, has one five-star and 17 four-stars. Tennessee has one five-star and 13 four-stars. Texas, three five-stars, 11 four-stars. Like I can keep going through. Even like and there are some schools that don't have a five-star, but they have so many more four-star commits like Mizzou, South Carolina, Ole Miss. But what's going on? What's happening on the trail? Like I know they're still after some guys, but what's going on? Like like the tough part is like my whole talking point for like last season we talked about after they lost to FSU. I remember we talked to Brandon on the Alligator podcast about where does Billy sit on the hot seat, and I think we both agreed where it's like okay, the schedule's tough. A 6-6, 7-5 would be fine. Just you gotta nail the recruiting. And now they could still do that with the record, but the recruiting's just not there unless there's like some really late turnaround and it really goes up at the very end. Like this is the time where you got to start building up guys, especially since, if you have a fallout, if you have guys decommit and flip, if you build up enough guys where it's like, okay, the class is still strong enough to where it's fine. Whereas like if this current class has some guys flip or decommit, then you're really in trouble. Then you're like, oh, who's even going to play for this team next year?
Yeah,
And so that's
there's just no recruits and there's no juice on the trail. They're not particularly competitive for any of the remaining top names. There's no buzz on the trail. Uh, it's the most like it's really funny because Billy, as a football coach, does not seem like a lame duck at all. He seems super engaged, honestly, in many ways more engaged as a football coach than ever. But the recruiting kind of seems like it's radio silent in a way that's extremely lame duck. And maybe that's where he's treating it. He's like, I'm fired anyway. Screw the kids, screw the
that's what I'm
recruiting.
saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, great. Maybe you say like they pull off this incredible season, like they upset Ole Miss or Texas. Like say they even go 8-4, win a bowl game, go 9-4. That's great. But like Graham is gone, Chamir and Badger are gone, your best corner, Jason Marshall's gone. Maybe some of these juniors say that like their prospects in the pro draft are better and they declare. And it's like, what now? Because you didn't recruit good enough. And then it's like, okay, then you have to be like Mike Norvell and hit the transfer portal hard. And that could work. Like it worked last year for FSU. It's not working this year for FSU. And so then you're kind of banking a lot on the fact of like, okay, we're taking a 50-50 shot on building through the transfer portal. And it can work. I just don't. it should be like supplementary pieces. It shouldn't be your entire philosophy, you know? Like if you can add a really good wide receiver, like a Chamir DK, like an Elijah Badger, do it. Because like that is a position that's shown where it's like you can kind of plug and play them and get immediate impact, immediate juice. And we saw Ricky Pearsall. But like if you're like, okay, we need to rebuild our offensive line, let's hit the portal. Chances are that's not going to work. Like we've seen that's a position you just have to recruit at the high school level. And so it worries me, man. The recruiting show worries me. Whoever comes in after him is really gonna have to hit the trail hard immediately. And
Yeah.
so, do you have any other thoughts on the recruiting trail? Or I guess anything
No,
coaching or Tennessee wise?
no, I mean, I think big picture, like I also think recruiting could improve if they do actually do the thing. Like you beat Tennessee, you get all this momentum. I think Florida kind of recruits itself to a degree. Um, and if you can show the recruits like, hey, this is not a lame duck staff, this is not a completely cooked program, then will just kind of naturally turn, and some guys that want to go to Florida but are committed elsewhere because it's a shit show could flip, or uncommitted guys in the Southeast could be like, okay, they're kind of doing the thing. It's still possible, but again, all this is still kind of fantasy land. I expect them to lose like 49-7 to Tennessee.
Yeah. I think Florida's best chance to beat Tennessee is simply if Tennessee is in their own heads. Because I think, especially with a lot of these rivalries with like winning streaks, like the idea of like teams getting in your head is a real thing. I mean, if you think like Tennessee on paper is a vastly superior team to Florida this year. But if you look at the history, they won 10 straight from like 2004 to like 2015 or something. And or they won 11 straight. And dating back to that first one to start that streak, Florida's 17-2 against Tennessee. So it's like, yes, they beat Tennessee or Tennessee beat Florida 2 years ago in Billy's first year in Knoxville, but like they probably should have won last year in Gainesville and they got smoked. 29-16 was not really indicative of how that game played out. And Florida just kind of they have a lot of real estate there in Tennessee's head, and I was kind of same with Kentucky. I mean, there were a lot of games towards the end of that winning streak when Florida was winning 27 straight, where like it was so close, and Kentucky probably should have beat them a couple of times. But then it's the psyche. Like they had a missed field goal that let Florida win 28-27 one game, and a triple overtime game where Florida just came on top, and so many of these games where it's like, they finally broke through and now that it's kind of flipped where Kentucky just kind of has the psyche over Florida. But there were so many years where it's like, man, they just like you just can't get over the top. Like Florida, of course Florida's gonna win. They win every year. Like we just can't do it. And then they won 27 straight. And it's maybe that same thing where it's like, man, we're better than them. We're better than Florida. Like we're Tennessee. We're a top 10 team. Like we are a CFP contender this year. And we just can't get over it. We can't do it. And this is not me saying that Tennessee is going to lose to Florida, but I'd say if there was like one single factor that maybe led to that, it would honestly be that less so than anything on the football field. So, kind of getting into speaking of Billy Napier being cooked, our mega hot board, we had 25 names, and this was an idea I posed to you. I want to do it. So we're gonna vote some coaches off the island because some of them I don't want as Florida's head coach. So we could do more than three because I feel like more than three of them have earned their way off, but we'll stick it to just three. I'm gonna give myself a pick, I'm gonna give you a pick, and then we'll come to agreement on a third pick. So I'll start with mine. Unfortunately, I'm going to vote your guy off, Gus Malzahn. Good coach overall. I mean, the stats and history speak for itself, but I think he's just too old. I think he's washed. I think he's maybe given it up just a little bit. I don't think he's got his same juice anymore. So Gus Malzahn, I fear you are voted off the island. Topher, who is
Yeah,
your
it
pick?
it to that point on Gus, it does pain me to say as much as I do love Gus Malzahn, he's got my favorite vibes, one of my favorite dudes in coaching. Yeah, it's so over. I still think he could build long term at UCF into like something, but like man, that is no juice.
It's
It would
tough.
not work at Florida. No Gus.
It's a
Gus
tough scene.
is gone. Um Okay, so I'm gonna vote out the guy who I was least excited to put on the list to begin with, and I think we can all agree we don't need to play this game anymore. And that is Mr. Eli Drinkwitz of Missouri.
Let's go. We're out. We're out on him. I
I think
mean,
we can all agree that we don't have to pretend about the Missouri thing anymore. They're mid at
they
best.
got cooked. They got
They were
cooked.
always mid. They were
There
mid
we go.
last year.
He is gone. And I think we can come to agreement. I'm gonna pose to you my guy, Alex Golish, because I think he can still be something in the ACC, but I think he still may be a year from being a year away. So, are you
Yeah,
in agree with
that's
me,
a
Alex
that's a
Golish?
that's a great way to put it. I think that's kind of a not wrong, just early situation.
Yeah,
Uh, he's not ready for prime time. He's still got a couple years to cook in the AAC. Um, have a great time at like Mississippi State when Jeff Lebby gets fired or something like
exactly.
that.
And to anybody at home watching or listening, and they remember our list, we're not wavering on Lincoln Riley just yet. At least I'm not wavering on
Uh,
Lincoln Riley.
uh,
Lincoln Riley, it's
I'm,
not working at USC. Come to Gainesville. It's not going to
you
work in
know,
LA.
I'm looking at this list again. I'm not loving Lincoln Riley anymore, but he does stay. I would keep him. The guy who I'm watching with very curious eyes, who's rising very quickly, is
Rhett
Mr. Rhett
Lashley.
Lashley,
Rhett
aka
Lashley
Gus Malzahn
train.
Jr.
Dude, he would be sick. I would love Rhett Lashley.
Gus Jr.
Uh,
has the juice.
I mean Rhett and Lane. I have
Is that the
eyes.
guys now?
I still have faith in Lane Kiffin that it's just not going to work in LA, so he should come to Florida. It's like a retirement home, bro. Come on. Come home.
Um,
All right.
Matt Campbell.
Uh
Still keep an eye on Matt Campbell
oh yeah.
as well.
Ooh, true. I'm gonna post to you my Chappell run theory real quick. So I have a Chappell run theory. Chappell, I know this is my message to her directly. I know you've been dealing a lot with the social media and people calling you out in all these interviews. So I'm gonna come out in support of you and I'm gonna pose this to you. I think you should come play more shows close to college towns and you need to do more university chants. Because here's what I'm noticing. She plays a show in Rogers, Arkansas. She calls the Hogs after singing Hot to Go. She has the mascots on stage, the cheerleaders. She calls the Hogs. Arkansas beats Tennessee and possibly could save Sam Pittman his job for one more year. The Hogs have been called. So Chaperone sings that they're 1-0. Chaperone has her song parodied by Cal. They almost beat Miami, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, but that wasn't her directly singing it, so they fell 1 point short. So I'm saying if she actually played in Berkeley and did a little, the story, maybe Cal wins its next game. So I'm creating a theory that wherever Chaperone goes and she does the college's chant, they're gonna win because we're 1-0 to start. And because Arkansas, really, they should not have won that game on Saturday. I mean, maybe they did play very well, but I'm just gonna say it. So Chaperone theory real quick. I think she should play more college shows. Chappell, please come to Gainesville and do a Gator chomp right before they play Georgia, and we'll see what happens. So that's me posing my chaperone theory. I have two more notes. Um, one's on Cal, but I'm gonna put that off. I'm gonna talk about why do we have an epidemic of players unloading the clip. Dylan Stewart hit Jackson Dart with the cheese grater. Absolutely unloaded the full clip on bro after sacking him. When they're down 27-3, we have a Minnesota player simulating brandishing a firearm. Why, like, why is it this season that every football player is doing that?
Dude, uh, it's a crisis. It started in week one. Remember Kyron Lacey in
Yeah.
the USC game? It's it's crazy. It's at the NFL is happening. College football. The Dylan Stewart one is so funny.
Well, he did it twice. Did you see the other one?
There was another one.
They he like sacked Jackson Dart, or like maybe it was a tackle for loss to like pin Ole Miss inside the 5. Again, it's still 27-3. And he like looks at all his teammates and he's doing this to like pretend like he was shitting the entire Ole Miss team. But like, if you haven't seen the Dylan Stewart clip, the first one on Jackson Dart, you have to look it up because it's the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. Like, I don't think this is necessarily like bad. Maybe it has some bad implications down the road, but for now, I think it's mostly just funny. Like, it's a funny epidemic of like all these football players all of a sudden deciding like, oh, I'm gonna just unload the clip. I think the funniest so far, besides Dylan Stewart, was the Falcons, either week one or week two, when Raheem Morris, their head coach, said that Drake London's a good kid. He was just pretending to shoot a t-shirt gun. That was incredible. That was incredible work. Shout out Raheem Morris. I mean, that's what it is. They're all just shooting t-shirt guns, man. Dylan Stewart said, Jackson Dart, it doesn't look like you're wearing enough clothes. T-shirts to the face, you know? So, I mean, I don't have much to say on it, but I just feel like I wanted to bring it up because my God, is it so funny.
Dude, it's the funniest thing is that I think everybody universally agrees that these are deserved penalties.
No, they are. I mean, it's
And,
just the
and
Dylan
it's
Stewart one the most. Like when you're doing it directly into someone's face when they're on the ground like that, you can't do that, bro. You can't do that.
oh
It's funny.
the screen grab of Dylan Stewart like blasting Jackson Dart in the face. It's so funny.
It's incredible. Um, and then Notre Dame was on a bye week, correct? Or did they
Yep.
just play someone so mid I didn't even see it?
No, bye week. Won the bye week though. A&M
There we
crushed
go.
Missouri. USC lost. Michigan lost. That's a Notre Dame W in
That's
my
all you
book.
need. You need the strength of schedule going up.
Yep.
The Northern Illinois loss is looking worse though, because they look like they are going to be a
Don't worry about it.
mid-ass MAC team.
Don't worry about it.
And so final, I guess we'll close it out with my Cal rant. Okay, so I watched this game with my dad, because again, he went to Cal, and I did not expect Cal to win this game going in. I kind of thought Miami would win it like 42-14. And it's halftime's 21-10. And I'm like, okay. Cal is a lead. They're playing well, but I don't think it's going to stay this way. I think Miami's going to come out juice for the second half. Then Cam Ward does a pick six. And then Cal has a touchdown drive. And it's 35-10. And I'm like, my thought process is that Cal can't, they could not run the ball like at all. Cal can't run the ball, but the screen game, like they had two screen passes go for like 60 plus yards. One was a Jaden Not touchdown. And it's working so well. And then they just went away from it. And the offensive line's actually pretty bad. And Fernando Mendoza is under pressure and they can't really chew any time off the clock. And Miami just keeps moving down the field and they keep scoring. They keep scoring. And I'm like, oh, it's happening, isn't it? Oh, it's happening. The moment it was 38-25, I was like, it's happening. They're going to lose this game, but just how? And I've seen people who are like, maybe Cal shouldn't have blown a 25-point lead as to like when all the people are crying about the penalty calls. That's true. They should not. They should not have blown a 25-point lead. They probably should have played the game plan a little bit better, and that is on Justin Wilcox for playing way too conservative, playing not to lose rather than playing to win. But also, it's like when you do get that close, I mean, how is that not targeting, bro? I've seen explanations for, I listened to this to Alex Kirshner's explanation on the SED hurry up, and I still don't know. Like, yes, like maybe that's true that wasn't the crown, but it's like that like almost killed Nando. Like he was on the ground for a while and like the hit was ridiculous. And the fact that that still wasn't like anything drives me a little bit crazy. And that would have given Cal a first down. It would have let them ice the game. And then the illegal man downfield on the touchdown pass. What are we doing? I just, the fact that Miami 2 weeks in a row have had this just extremely controversial ref show. And then you're like, okay, is Miami ever going to get their comeuppance? And you look at their schedule and you're like, oh no, their schedule is what it is. Like if you, I don't know if you've looked at Miami's schedule the rest of the year. If they don't go undefeated, then that team is so fraudulent because they play Louisville next week, and Louisville is what they are. Unfortunately, to my guy Jeff Brom, I don't think Tyler Shuck is the answer. Then they get FSU at home. Then they get Duke at home, and then they close it out with Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. And the only team that moves me on that schedule is Syracuse. And even then, I'm like, I don't think so. And so Cal really missed a golden opportunity. And with all the momentum they had built with Calgorithm and College Game Day, and then you go up 35 to 10, and then you close, and then you have that happen. It feels very indicative of Justin Wilcox in the Wilcox era. And I still like him as a coach, but I don't know, man. I don't know how much longer they can keep going of this. Or even the team's not that good, but they're still finding ways to underperform. And so Rhett Lashley to Cal is basically what I'm saying. That's where I'm getting at. Lincoln Riley to Cal. You know what? No, Lincoln Riley should go to Cal. If he gets the boot at USC, he should go to Cal. I think that would be really funny and awesome. So that's my take on Cal. Lincoln Riley to Cal.
Dude, that sucks. If I to come that close and to to both choke and ref show is crazy.
I
That's
was
nasty work.
I was sick, man. I was sick to my stomach just because, like, you know what's gonna happen before it even starts. Like they punted it down to like the inside the 5 yard line, and like I didn't think that Xavier Restrepo was gonna immediately break off an 80 yard pass, but it's like they have to go 96 yards, and it's like they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. They're gonna score a touchdown and win this game, and it's just like prolonging the inevitable. It was tough, man. Shout out former Gator David Reese though. Did his best. Um, but yeah, man. Miami, they make me sick. They make me sick to my stomach, bro. That was the most sick I've been watching a football game in some time. Uh, so that's my final thought on that. Lane Kiff or not Lincoln Riley. You can stay in California. Berkeley's better than LA. You'll have much less heat on you from the media. Trust. So that is my take. Um, anything else you want to add on anything? In the Gators?
Uh, College football is awesome. It makes me very happy. I'm glad my teams didn't disappoint me during a fun week of upsets.
There we go.
Uh, and yeah, I'm excited to see if Florida is complete cheeks against a functional opponent again.
I believe that they'll keep it within 3 scores. So there we go. This has been another episode. We're back. We're back, and we will be back next week to talk about Tennessee, unless they win by 100, in which there's not much to say. So there we go. This has been another episode. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and peace.